Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play. Like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 59 of DBR Bites, Duke Basketball Roundup. I know sometimes you may have trouble figuring out why is this one a Bites and this one a full episode. Honestly, it's because when we start the episode, we think, okay, this one's going to be a little bit shorter, and so we make it a Bites. And then inevitably the Bites episodes end up going long, and then the regular episodes go shorter, and we can't renumber them. We can't rename them after we've recorded them. So anyway, DBR Bites number 59. I am Jason Evans. Joining me is my buddy, my partner in crime, Donald Wine. Donald, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're recording on Sunday afternoon. The 1 p.m. NFL games are done. The Lions are on Sunday night. So after we are done with this episode, Jason, I have to figure out where I'm going to watch that game because it's a big one. Matt Stafford's back in town. Last time he was in town, I was there too. And it was a glorious night for the Lions. So, hey, shout out the first weekend of the NFL season.
Yeah, meanwhile, Falcon fans are enduring our team having one of the worst opening of the seasons. We're terrible. We thought we were going to be good, and it looks like we're terrible. Our offense.
You were not the Panthers, so you were fine.
Yeah, but expectations were higher. By the way, folks should know I'm not recording from my usual place, so I sound a little bit different. It is because I am, in fact, at the Jersey Shore. Donald can probably see behind me. It is bright and sunny and just looks fabulous here in Longport.
It looks like a green screen.
It doesn't look real, does it? I know.
Like a background, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look real. Great weather here at the Jersey Shore. I'll be here for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. But it will not infringe upon my ability to analyze what's happening with the Duke Blue Devils. And we are going to have on this episode, our conversation is going to be about the football team and the game that happened on Friday night. I guess an epic game. It was an amazing game to watch in terms of how it ended. I don't know throughout the whole thing how I felt about it.
Here, Jason, I didn't write this down, but when I was talking with people during the game about this, the words that I was using during the game were things like stupid, dumb, hate football, like things like that. And then when we won, it was we're 2-0, we're playoff bound, we're the greatest team in Division I football. That nobody can stop us, not even the house by the lake.
Yeah, and I think it is worth noting before we get into our whole conversation about Duke's 26-20 overtime victory over Northwestern. I want to note something to anyone who is down, who is a little bit frustrated, who found it very difficult to watch some of the offensive, frankly, ineptitude on display. First of all, our running back, our starting running back, the best guy in the backfield, the guy who's the best blocker back there, the guy who sort of finds the holes best, got injured very early in this contest. Donald, you and I had talked about how important it was for Duke to establish the ground game. We were unable to do that because of an injury, in my opinion. But number two, and far more importantly, as you said, this was played in a weird stadium, in a weird location, right next to Lake Michigan, with the wind blowing 25 plus miles per hour throughout the entire game. I don't think those of us at home can appreciate how that probably impacted each team's ability to pass the ball, to kick the ball, to do any. I mean, like you hear about the wind, you go, oh, they're kicking into the wind or whatever. You don't realize how much that impacts a game where the ball needs to travel through the air across next to, with the wind, whatever it may be. And Donald, to me, the biggest indication of how it changed the game was a week ago against Elon. We saw Malik Murphy go downfield, 40 plus yards downfield, at least 6 times, maybe more than that. I think there was like maybe one of those in this game, maybe one or two at the most. You just didn't see Duke trying to punch it deep against Northwestern. I think the way you're going to throughout the rest of the season. I think that's because Malik Murphy and the Duke offensive coordinators and such probably realized, hey, my ability to put it on a dime at 40 yards is greatly impacted by a 25-mile-an-hour wind. So it just changes the Duke offense completely.
And not just a 25-mile-an-hour wind, a swirling wind at that. I mean, the lake. Anyone who has been to Chicago or the Chicago area, that wind swirls in all directions. And even at Ryan Field, when they played at the big stadium before it was demolished to make way for the new one, the wind swirled around there as well because of just how the gaps of the stadium work. So it's something that you always have to experience when you go to Northwestern to play. But Jason, I will say, credit to a lot of these guys on the offense. They really grinded it out. While it felt ugly from a TV perspective, at least those of us watching. I will say that, for us to lose Jacquez Moore early in the game and still get 93 rushing yards, which was almost double what we had in week 1 against Elon, okay, it's not where we want to be, but at least we're showing improvement in that area. And again, we needed some of those yards to establish what we wanted to do. I think the one thing that you mentioned, Jason, that we did on offense that was really, in a way, genius by this coaching staff was to identify the fact that, hey, the deep ball is not going to work. Let's go these quick slants all game long. And if you think about a couple of our touchdowns were based on that, a quick slant to Eli Panko, a quick slant to Jordan Moore. Jordan Moore had 11 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Man was all over the place, but also, again, the longest play that we had was a 25-yard catch by him where he caught the ball and then was able to elude a couple of defenders and get downfield a little bit further. So I like the fact that they kind of switched that. Did it make it frustrating because a lot of those plays, it took a while to adjust? Yeah. But again, I think when we talk about the offense and defense, both teams experienced the same struggles in the same areas.
For sure.
Just that and turnovers, we'll talk about turnovers as well. We both had turnovers. We both had, key moments where we were able to make big plays. We just made one more big play at the end, and that was the difference in this game.
Yeah, and by the way, you're talking about mistakes. There are penalties. Penalties abound. I think there were 16 penalties in this game, 8 on each team. A week ago, Duke had 0 penalties. So,
right.
Hey, I want to start with something, an email that we got from John Grantland, who emails us all the time, one of the really good listeners that we have out there. And John said, I don't know why you guys take headlines on the basketball games and not on the football games. And he's absolutely right. If we're going to cover the football games, we should take headlines from all of you. So officially now, the DBR inbox, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. It is open for headlines after each and every football game. But John, of course, gets the first one because it was his suggestion. And here is his headline from last night's game. Closing time. Murphy leads the Devils to an overtime victory, showing the Wildcats in the world that for Duke, Chicago is my kind of town. I like that, John. It is an excellent headline. And the idea for us to collect headlines the way we do during the basketball season for football, hell yes. I love it. So that is how we will kick off our real coverage of this game with John's headline.
I will say on that headline, if I don't necessarily have a headline to match that, and I thank John for bringing up that suggestion, I would offer that the DBR inbox is always open during football season. So if people want to email headlines or other takes on the game, that is great. But I did want to, before we get into the game, Jason, I want to shout out one person, and that person is Northwestern's Theron Johnson. Now, Theron Johnson in the first half, he caught an interception right as he was falling out of bounds on the Duke sideline. And I don't know if you saw this, Jason, but he taunted the team by tossing the ball to Manny Diaz, right? In a mocking way, just kind of tossed the ball to him and said, hey, I caught it. Now you can keep it while we go back on offense. Now, I say that because normally you're like, oh, wow, that's savage. Except that he gave up the game-winning touchdown in the second overtime. So I hope you enjoyed the film session on that one, buddy. It's one thing to taunt, but you better continue to back it up and don't do it so early in the game where you leave enough time on the clock, or as they say in Fast and Furious, when they hit the NOS too quick, too soon, Junior. That's what you did. You taunted too soon, Junior, and now Hopefully that film session isn't where you're the butt of all the jokes. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to him because I thought one that was an interesting point in the game, and I said to myself when it happened, I hope he better hope that doesn't come back to bite him. Well, thankfully, Duke bit last, and we got the rest of the meal.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, it's worth noting. I mean, hats off to Northwestern. I thought that Duke was clearly the better team. If you put these two teams on neutral field with regular kind of wind and stuff like that, I think that this Duke team is better than Northwestern. But Northwestern, frankly, played better than we did, and they made way fewer mistakes than we did. I'll say it right now. I think that Duke got lucky to win this game, but I'll take lucky any day of the week. And frankly, considering the mistakes and the bad luck that we had throughout most of the game, to get a little luck in the second overtime, heck yes. And I'll say this. I think if this team can clean up some of the dropped passes and get our good running back healthy, we could really do some special stuff this season. I'm not down despite a game. Yes, we won, but it was not a pretty win. It was not a win where you go, that was aesthetically interesting to me. It was a win that you kind of gutted out in weird conditions.
I agree with all that, Jason. I do want to add on a bad note that we are going to have to figure out a way to kind of redevelop this blocking scheme and also the short passes in light of, you mentioned Jacquez Moore being hurt. The bigger injury in a way was Jeremiah Hasley also being injured very bad in the first half. He was carted off with was a leg injury. They haven't made an update as to how severe it is, but I'll tell you, look on the field in real time, it looks severe. The whole team came off the bench to kind of wish him well as he was carted off the field. You don't really see that unless it's something that's super serious. But that really hurts Duke because other than Nicky Dalmelin, like there's not a lot of experience at the tight end position. And a lot of times what we were doing to help shore up the run was have two tight end sets. We can't do that now unless we have another guy step in and hopefully there's somebody ready to step in and make that leap up into the starting role. But it's going to be interesting to see how this coaching staff on offense redevelops the scheme, depending on how long Jacquez Moore is out. Hopefully that part is not serious. And he's back very soon, but we're going to have to figure out a way to redevelop the blocking scheme so that Malik Murphy can be protected. And again, we can also establish the run.
Yeah, and while you don't want to look ahead and you don't want to put anybody down, it does look like the next couple of weeks should be games where Duke doesn't necessarily need Jacquez Moore. You can maybe get by with some of the other guys on offense for our next couple of contests. But back to this game against Northwestern, I wanted to point out something. On Duke's final 4 possessions of the game, they had 165 yards of total. That's impressive. 165 yards of offense on the final 4 possessions. On their first 11 possessions of the game, they had just slightly more, like 172 or something like that, just slightly more than 165. Basically, for the first 11 possessions, we did next to nothing. And then suddenly it just opened up for us in a very, very big way. I'm going to go ahead, even though that's kind of a negative, I'm going to go ahead and take it as a positive that the team figured out how to, become effective on offense in a weird situation in a game where they were struggling. I mean, we didn't reach 100 yards of total offense until the middle of the third quarter. And after scoring our touchdown, where we had a short field, we had a run of 5 straight possessions where we got a total of 35 yards and 1 first down. 5 possessions, 35 yards. That's just really bad. Basically the entire second and third quarters, we did nothing. Only 1 first down in the entire 2 middle quarters of the game. But this team, the defense kept them in it in a really impressive way. It wasn't like a bend and don't break. They would sometimes give up some plays to Vandy, but not too much. Vandy was struggling to go places the same way Duke was.
Northwestern.
I'm sorry, I said Vandy. But you know what I'm thinking?
Similar schools, different conference. Yes.
Well, I'm thinking of where Mike Wright used to play football. He played
right.
at Vandy.
Yeah.
That's what I had in my head. Thank you for correcting me. By the way, I'm the idiot who in our preview was talking about San Diego State instead of South Dakota State when talking about the Northwestern offensive coordinator. I'm struggling with names here, my friend. But anyway, the point I was going to make about all of this was with with Duke struggling as much as we did, even once we started to pick it up a little bit, I was still like very, very worried about this game. We had a turnover on downs. We missed a short field goal. I was like, we're just not winning this game. We had the fumble by Malik Murphy. And I'm like, I almost turned it off. I was like, it's just done. And then that fumble gets reversed. And it's like the light switch went on. Mm-hmm. And it went from what was going to be an incredibly frustrating loss to a very, very encouraging, exciting win. That was both my bad and my good. Where are you on this contest? Is it a good or a bad game? I'm not sure where it stacks up. It's a W for sure.
I think it's both, and you can be honest and say that it was bad for a while and then it was good, right? As I mentioned during the game, I was like, yo, this game is dumb. Football's stupid. I hate sports. And then when we won, I was like, yo, we're the best team in the world, right? And you can have that euphoria from winning a big game like that. And again, I think it was funny that after the game, that all the different like tweets and stuff about the game, because it was the only game on Friday night after the NFL game, and so it was Duke shocks Northwestern. Duke upsets Northwestern. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the 6th straight win we've had against Northwestern. So again, the ACC is so far down in people's minds that beating Big Ten Northwestern is beating the Big Ten. And I think, again, we talked about how when the ACC wants to level up in stature, beating teams from other conferences are going to help. And I said, hey, it may not feel like it, but Duke beating Northwestern will help the ACC in the long run. It only shows by just how the reaction was to this game. But Jason, I do think in the midst of the bad, there are a couple of points that I think you can say, hey, we got some flashes of brilliance from people. 93 yards rushing, as I mentioned, it was an improvement from Elon. It's not where we want to be, but I think Star Thomas did well after Jacquez Moore went out to kind of shoulder that load. He had 58 yards. Hit 3.4 on the average on the ground. And I felt like there's a couple of them where he was just very close to breaking it open for a big gain. And I think, again, he was able to kind of adjust to being the number one back for the most part after Jacquez Moore left. You and I in the preview said that if two guys did well, we would win this ball game. And those two guys were Jordan Moore and Eli Pankel. You said Eli Pankel was going to go for 100 yards. I said, Jordan Moore's going to go for 100 yards. And if they both got 100 yards, we're going to win the game. Well, Jordan Moore helped me out. He got, again, 11 receptions for 120 yards, and a touchdown. But Jason, I will say that Eli Pankel was just as great, if not maybe even better, because of the 2 catches he had, both of them were caught in the end zone for touchdowns. And again, both of them very, very important touchdowns. He had the first one that kind of put us in the lead, and then he had one in overtime to send us. It was a double overtime, I think it was the one that he had again on a slant where he almost scored and then was able to get the ball in the next play. So shout out those guys again. Experienced veteran players making experienced veteran plays, and that is what helped us over the top. And I've said it a couple of times over the last few weeks. I'm super glad that Eli Pankel is back, because him being on this team creates a whole nother dynamic for this offense. And again, as it continues to improve, Jordan Moore and Eli Pankel being those steady hands while everything else gets into place is really going to help calm this offense down.
Yeah. So my last thing on this game that I want to mention, I can't imagine what it must feel like to be a Northwestern fan and lose that game. And not just because it felt like they were, I don't want to say in control, but, not just because it felt like they were doing the right things throughout most of the game. It's because they had a situation where they were 3rd and 1 on the 3-yard line in the second overtime. They were and Cam Porter of Northwestern was running over us. They're basically just handing him the ball and letting him just wallop over guys. They have 3rd and 1, and what was that call? It was too cute by a half. Sending your quarterback into and I know their quarterback is fast as lightning, as we heard repeatedly throughout this game. He's a 200-meter champion, and the dude could outrun, anyone else on the field. But sending him into like this bootleg scramble thing, what are you thinking? Just give Cam Porter the ball one more time. He's going to get you a first down. You're going to have first and goal at the 1. And if you blow it, by the way, you still got fourth down because they knew they had to go for it. I don't understand what it is one of the worst calls I've seen by an offensive coordinator. There's no reason to get cute there. There's no reason to do something fancy. Do the thing that you've been doing for a while that is succeeding wildly effectively. I don't understand it, but it's saved it because the difference in them 3rd and 1 from the 3 and 4th and 9 is just night and day. And it was just a really, really bad decision by the Northwestern offensive coordinator.
You don't experiment on Thanksgiving. You don't experiment down in the goal line. You do what you're supposed to do. You do what got you to that point to get you into the end zone. That's what, the rule of thumb generally is, save a Philly special here or there. But Jason, as we wrap up this game, I did want to focus a little bit on the defense because we haven't done that yet. Let's start with this.
They do deserve their flowers. Yes, go for it.
11 tackles for loss on Friday night. That is 27 so far through 2 games. That is incredible. Some teams have to go 8-9 weeks before they get 27 tackles for loss. We've done it in 2 games. I think that is incredible. We mentioned that the turnovers on both sides were interesting. But again, we were able to take the ball away. Ozzie Nicholas recovers a fumble. Terry Moore had an interception and forced a fumble that Nicholas recovered. I think again, making
we had a couple other interceptions kind of glance out of our hands too.
Again, some of those were on 3rd downs and stuff like that that got our defense off the field. So we didn't get the arm punt, but again, I thought our defense for the most part was all over the place. And the one thing that we said that they needed to do was hold Mike Wright for the most part. And I think for the most part they did, right? He 158 yards passing, only 17 rush yards. So it wasn't like he was able to get free on anything. And his longest play of the day was 25 yards. So I thought that was
and by the way, I said in the preview to this game, I said, if Mike Wright is at around 150 yards, Duke's going to win. If he's around 250, Vandy's going to win. He was right around that 150. And you know who finished up as the winning team?
Yeah, exactly. And also, Jason, you mentioned Cam Porter and how he was disrespecting this for a lot. If you think about it, they only had 130 yards rushing, Northwestern did.
Yeah.
44 came on one play. So if you take that out, they're really at around where we did, right? They're in the 90s as far as rushing. And again, I think that is, I commend the defense for sticking with it. Getting the play. They didn't get all the big plays, but they got plays when we needed to. And I think the biggest play is the one that ended the game, right? In the end zone.
Amen.
They have a chance to tie it or perhaps get the win on a 2-point conversion because we were in 2 OT and we shut them down. Good night from the lake. Duke comes home 2-0. And I think that's great. You take those victories. I don't think we may have another Friday game. I think we do against Florida State. So we have to keep our undefeated record on Fridays continuing, but we have to wait a little bit for that. Now we get to start playing on Saturdays.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to look across the rest of the ACC, pick out 1 or 2 games that we think are interesting as this conference tries to make a name for itself in the first year of the 12-team playoff. Are there going to be any ACC teams going to make it? Oh, my God. I think there have to be. I think the rules say there has to be, but it doesn't look too impressive so far. We'll have that after a quick break. All right, Donald, we're back from the break, and I just want to really quickly go through some of the rest of the ACC. And I'll let you start because your Miami Hurricanes appear to be, I don't know, maybe the only good team in the conference. They were impressive again in week number 2, weren't they?
They were amazing in week 2, 59-9 over Florida A&M. But yes, you're thinking, it's Florida A&M, but it
was 56-9.
56-9, excuse me. But I think the main thing here is Miami looked good from the start. They dominated against the team that they're supposed to dominate. And I mentioned, teams have to take care of business against the teams they're supposed to take care of business against. And Florida A&M is not supposed to be a team that comes in and ruffles your feathers. You're supposed to take care of business and get out of town. Cam Ward looks, again, following up from his week 1 performance, did extremely well. They were able to get some guys in. A lot of guys touched the football. A lot of guys made big plays. And I love what I'm seeing so far from Miami. And again, they just need to keep continuing it. It goes week by week, but early on, they look like the class of the ACC. And Jason, I do, as we move to some of the other games, the one game that I want to shout out, it was one that we talked about last week. We said, hey, if we want the ACC to get the stature build up, they need to beat teams from the other big conferences, namely the SEC and the Big Ten. Duke took care of business against the Big Ten, right? Guess who took care of business against Auburn? Cal went
baby.
up in Auburn and beat Auburn 21-14 at Jordan-Hare. I think that was probably the big game or the biggest victory of the ACC on the weekend. Again, Auburn's not great, but Auburn is an SEC opponent that, again, when people saw that on SportsCenter and all the others, they're like, Cal who was picked to finish 13th or something in the conference, like Cal went in there and beat Auburn. That's a big win for the ACC, and I think the ACC should be delighted at least at that part, and also again at Duke beating Northwestern. Two big conferences going down by ACC teams on the road, I think is great.
Yeah. By the way, the ACC also had another game against the SEC. NC State played Tennessee. Oh my goodness,
that didn't go as well.
Tennessee wins this one 51-10. 51-10. NC State was supposed to be like, I don't know, top 3, top 4 in the ACC, something like that. They're ranked. They won't be ranked anymore after a game like that. 51-10 against Tennessee. Really, really, it just mollywopped. Georgia Tech was ranked. They were 2-0 in the season. They fall to Syracuse 31-28. Not a bad line. I mean, it's not like it's terrible or anything like that. But, if you're a Georgia Tech team that was like, oh, wait, we beat Florida State, we are on our way, this certainly is a setback for you. And I wanted to note that Boston College, 56-0. Now they're playing Duquesne. Let's be clear. But still, 56-0. I mean, the score was 42-0 at half. 42-0 at halftime. Boston College just mollywop Duquesne. That is just ugly, ugly, ugly. And I don't know. There are a couple other things here. I actually think Louisville beat Jacksonville State 49-14. Jacksonville State's nothing, but I feel like through the early part of the season, Miami, Louisville. I mean, those teams look like they might be the class of the ACC this year. Louisville's been good in past years, and I think they may be on their way to another pretty good season this year.
Yeah, and I think we need to wait for Louisville to be tested once. They've had a couple of easy games so far, but again, they've looked all the greatness against those teams. I will also shout out that there was 2 ACC Big 12 matchups over the weekend. Both, Pitt was on the road at Cincy. They won by 1. BYU on the road against SMU. SMU loses by 3, and I think that's SMU's first loss on the season. They've played 3 games already. So I think, again, when you look at this, again, the ACC wants to be able to have these PowerPoints so that if, again, a team like Miami gets into the playoff, you have a conference champion, and you want to get that second team, you got to show that you're able to beat teams from other conferences. And all of these little things get added to the matrix because, again, you want to at the end to say, hey, the ACC was had a winning record against these big other 3 power conferences that you say are better than them. These are these little games that are going to help along the way. Now, 28-27 Pitt over Cincy may not feel like a game that's going to really be mentioned at the end of the season, but again, it adds to that record. And I think all these little games, as we continue to play other conferences, especially the Power, I keep saying Power 5, but there's now a Power 4,
baby.
Power 4 conference, of which we are the 4 in that. We want to be able to get up to number 3 and then number 2, right? To do that, you have to beat teams that people think are better than you. And so that's going to continue over the next couple of weeks with the non-conference schedule. And it is going to be at the end of the season as well when some of these, cross-state rivalry games happen that are interconference rivals. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the ACC continues to do against those Power 4 conferences. But really, I think the ACC, in a way, had a pretty decent week. It wasn't the best week, but we had some things that we can hang on our hat and say, yeah, we did well.
Yeah. By the way, we were talking about Louisville a moment ago. Just so folks are aware, they host Georgia Tech next week, and then the week after they're at Notre Dame. Now Notre Dame has its own issues.
Can I say real quick about Notre Dame?
Go ahead.
That was the perfect loss for me. As you know, Jason, I detest Notre Dame. I do not like them. I've not liked them since birth. But I really like Riley Leonard, and I want to see him do well while Notre Dame falters. He didn't have the best game, but at least the fact that the game ended on a missed field goal, and other things that happened during the game that weren't really Riley Leonard's fault, I can say, hey, they did their job. They lost to an unranked opponent in NIU, and Riley Leonard's not really to blame here. So he can still say, oh, Riley Leonard's still the guy. It's not like Ujulele in Florida State where they're talking about benching him. Riley Leonard's being absolved of a lot of the blame this morning, and a lot of it is focused on other areas of Notre Dame, which, shout out to Northern Illinois for going into South Bend. And I believe their coach played at Notre Dame. Is that correct?
I hadn't heard that. I haven't looked into it. All I know is
something where he ended up there because he had a connection to Notre Dame, but man was all tears after the game, and it was well-deserved. Congratulations to the Huskies.
Yeah, and by the way, Northern Illinois with probably the biggest regular season upset since Appalachian State.
We don't have to do it on this pod. We didn't have to bring that up. That didn't happen. It was decades ago. Come on.
It's still legend, my friend. It is still legend. All right, with that, we'll wrap it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast, DBR Bites. I am Jason Evans. He is Donald Wine. As we mentioned earlier in the program, please write to us. We love to hear from you folks. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. The inbox is always open. We are here for headlines. We're here for commentary and analysis. If we don't get back to you, it's not that we hate you. It's that our inbox is really busy. But usually we'll write back at least to say thanks a lot for the comment, and sometimes to say a lot more than that. In any event, that wraps us up here. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in just a couple days. There's some stuff going on with Duke basketball. I know we didn't get to it here. We are going to be talking about it very, very soon. We have to preview next weekend's game for the football team against UConn, and you never know what news is going to break at any moment. Until then, Donald, Jason, goodbye. And here is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.